There have been many texts that have supported the significance of sports teams for nations. It has been said that sports help to reinforce national consciousness and cultural nationalism, and that sports provide an outlet of emotional energy for frustrated peoples or nations. Hockey for Canada fits this definition perfectly, as it has been an integral part of its identity since its inception in the middle of the 19th century. Similar to the British sport of lacrosse, hockey became a cultural definer, being very Canadian, as it is played on ice, a symbol of our unique landscape. This relationship between hockey and identity was further promoted through the myths surrounding the many hero players whom stood out throughout our hockey history. These heroes were, and still are, elevated to religious icon status, serving as exemplary central figures in our nation's mythologies. Montreal's hockey club, Les Canadiens, founded on December 4th, 1909, is an integral part of Quebec, and particularly Montreal's, history and identity. From a series of 20 photographs taken on April 13, 1956, 3 days after the Stanley Cup winning game against the Detroit Red Wings, we will examine an image entitled Club de hockey Canadien, vainqueur de la coupe Stanley. By identifying the figures in the photograph, major players in both the hockey and political spheres in Montreal, we aim to further explore the importance in the closely knit relationship between hockey and the citizens of the city and the province. As one of the favorite and most successful hockey clubs in the National Hockey League's history, the Montreal Canadiens hold a special place in the hearts of both the city and the province inhabitants. This image depicts an honorary dinner held at the Hélène de Champlain restaurant, just a few short days after the 1956 Canadian Stanley Cup win. It features members of the hockey team at the forefront, notably Maurice the Rocket Richard, seated at a long table along with several city officials standing behind their own table above, such as Mayor Jean Drapeau and councillors Charles Mayer, Pierre Desmarais, and C. Hugh Hansen. It is described as part of a series of documentary photographs taken of the event, which are found in the Ville de Montréal archives. The photographer is unknown, and the image is not found in any newspaper or other publication of the time. The said photographer was most likely hired to document the event, or perhaps was even attending the dinner with his own camera. The image has a very distinct amateur snapshot quality. The photographer was not positioned in front of the team, and the figures are all gazing in different directions, one being cut off almost entirely on the bottom right. The image is not posed or well lit, as it would have been if it were for an official publication. This information puts the image in line with vernacular photography trends of the time. But, as Jeffrey Backen has argued, vernacular photography complements an art historical narrative, which in this case indicates the value this image and its content holds in the relationship between the city of Montreal and the hockey team. This photograph, taken in 1956, is from a time that parallels the shift in Quebec's nationalism, which in part led to the Quiet Revolution. As the tensions between English and French Canada were growing, due in part to the promotion of home front war efforts throughout the rest of Canada and the imposition of the military draft, Quebec was undergoing an introspection on the values and priorities which characterized their differences. While it is debated and unclear specifically when the Quiet Revolution started, we can affirm that the end of the Second World War sparked a certain desire for the liberation of Quebec society from autocratic government. The secularization of Quebec society stemmed from the rejection of conservative principles promoted under the leadership of Prime Minister Maurice Duplessis. As echoed by the Service de Ciné Photographie and their mandate to promote Quebec's lifestyle and heritage, the population hoped to reclaim the management of the province. It is important to underline this boiling revolution that culminates in the October crisis, since the Maurice Richard riots were said to be fueled as much by a frustration at the decision to suspend the iconic Maurice Richard than by a provocation from English Canada to put a lid on French Québécois' drive to establish and celebrate their own identity. Maurice Richard joined the senior club Les Canadiens in 1943. He was a hometown boy who grew up near Rivière-des-Prairies in a humble family. Nothing predestined the boy to become one of the greatest stars hockey will have ever seen. Richard had an incredible amount of talent, and during his 18 seasons played with Les Canadiens, won the Stanley Cup 8 times. Montreal and all of Quebec adored him. Roch Carrier attests to this idolization in this passage from his famous children's story, The Hockey Sweater.
We all wore the same costume as Maurice Richard did, the red, white, and blue costume of the Montreal Canadiens, the best hockey team in the world.
We all combed our hair like Maurice Richard, and we used a kind of hair glue to keep it in place. We laced our skates like Maurice Richard. We taped our sticks like Maurice Richard. We cut his picture out of all the newspaper, and we knew everything there was to know about Maurice Richard.
During the 1954-1955 playoffs, he was suspended by President Clarence Campbell following an altercation with linesmen and a player of the Boston Bruins. When the decision was broadcasted over the radio, seconds after Campbell had made his decision public, the news hit the city like a bomb. Fans were angry. Even the mayor, Jean Drapeau, described Campbell's decision as fatal to hockey in Montreal. The next day, on April 17, 1955, the box office announced that seats were sold out, but the Canadiens played rather poorly. After the first period, the crowd got out of hand with anger, and as the fans ran outside, riots with over 10,000 people involved were happening. André Laurendeau wrote in Le Devoir, "French-Canadian nationalism appears to have taken refuge in hockey. The crowds that vented their anger last Thursday night were not motivated solely by the passions of sport. It was frustrated people who protested against their fate." Maurice Richard was such an important figure in Quebec society that at the time of his death in May 2000, a large funeral was held at the Notre Dame Cathedral, broadcasted live on Canadian television. Attendees included the Governor-General and the Prime Minister, along with other important politicians. The extravagant ceremony, with over 100,000 fans present, followed a procession in the streets of the city. His body was laid to rest at the former Molson, now Bell Center, reminiscent of saints being displayed in churches. There are many elements within this image that emphasize the idea of hockey, and specifically of the team, as an integral part of Quebecois identity, which verges on a religion. The 1956 photograph, which was taken the year after the riots, displays an uncanny religious representation. The long table, decorated with food and wine, and several hockey players seated, notably Maurice Richard, is reminiscent of The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. Although this is quite unintentional, it confirms the ties to religion, which are continuously present in portrayals of the team. Some examples include pseudonyms attributed by partisans associated with the Stanley Cup and hockey jersey, the Holy Grail, and the Holy Flannel. The elevation of the team as an icon is mostly a result of their constant presence in early newspapers and magazines, not only in editorials, but in advertisements as well. One cannot forget the establishment of Hockey Night in Canada, which began airing on the radio in the 1930s, a major stepping stone in the dissemination of hockey games. Never had so many Canadians engaged in the same cultural experience at the same time, except perhaps when Sunday Mass was broadcasted on the radio. When television began broadcasting in the 1950s, these games quickly became a weekly tradition in all Quebec homes, building a community around the every move of these players. This was an important part in creating a deeply rooted, almost iconic place in Canadian culture for the hockey team. What we can retain from this photo is the need to document the event for the city of Montreal, which points to the importance of the hockey club as a national icon. The historical and social context in which the club rose to the status of favorite is one that is closely linked to Quebec nationalism and identity. Although it is not explicitly written in the photograph, its conservation in the city archives attests to the historical relevance that would have been acknowledged when the photo was taken, despite its vernacular feel. The photograph commemorates the first of a series of 5 consecutive wins, which eventually established les Canadiens de Montréal as the most successful, respected, and adored team of the National Hockey League.